You're a cheater." The words, sharp as glass, sliced through the cheerful afternoon chatter of a backyard barbecue. They came from my 17-year-old son, Leo. His face was pale, his eyes blazing with a kind of righteous fury that only a teenager can truly muster. He was pointing a trembling finger at me. And he wasn't just yelling at me. He was yelling at me in front of Anna, the first woman I had dated in years. In front of her two young children, who were now frozen mid-squirt gunfight, their eyes wide with shock. "You're replacing her," he choked out, his voice cracking. "You're just erasing her like she never mattered." The kicker? His mother, my late wife Sarah, had been gone for 2 years. 2 long, quiet, gut-wrenching years. And the story Leo had in his head, the epic romance of his mom and dad, was a carefully constructed lie. A lie I had maintained for his sake and for hers. The truth is, his mother and I were already deep in the process of divorcing when she got her diagnosis. And my cheating was me trying to find a reason to live again, long after our marriage was already dead and buried. This whole mess didn't start with a diagnosis. It started 5 years ago, with a single, devastatingly simple decision. 5 years ago, Leo was 12, and our house was quiet. Not peaceful quiet. It was the heavy, suffocating quiet of a library after closing time. Sarah and I were just roommates. We were fantastic business partners in the enterprise of raising a son. We coordinated schedules, shared grocery lists, and discussed parent-teacher conferences with the detached efficiency of air traffic controllers. But the husband and wife part? That was gone. There was no big fight, no dramatic betrayal. It was a death by 1,000 paper cuts. 1,000 nights of her coming home late from drinks with the girls. 1,000 of my weekends spent alone in my workshop while she took up a new hobby I wasn't invited to. Conversations became purely logistical. "Did you pay the electric bill? Leo has soccer at 4. We're out of milk." The last time I'd made her laugh, I mean really laugh, felt like a lifetime ago. We were 2 people sharing a mortgage and a kid, nothing more. She wasn't a bad person. She was just somewhere else. Her energy was focused outward, on her career, her friends, her book club, our home, our marriage. It felt like an obligation she returned to at the end of the day. I wasn't blameless either. I had stopped trying. It was easier to retreat into my own world than to keep knocking on a door that was never going to open. The conversation, when it finally happened, was almost a relief. We were cleaning up after dinner, the clinking of plates the only sound. I just said it. "This isn't working, is it?" Sarah stopped scrubbing a pan and looked at me. There were no tears, just a tired resignation in her eyes that mirrored my own. "No," she said softly. "It's not." We talked for hours that night, more than we had in years. It was sad, but it was amicable. We agreed we were better as co-parents than as partners. We made a plan. We'd tell Leo together. We'd sell the house and get 2 smaller places in the same school district. We were going to do it the right way, the modern way. To protect him, we decided I'd move into the guest room for a few weeks just to create some separation before we dropped the bomb on him. It felt so mature, so responsible. We were 3 weeks into that arrangement, researching real estate agents and drafting scripts for how to tell our son his world was about to break in two, when Sarah got a stomach ache that wouldn't go away. A week later, we were sitting in a sterile, beige-colored oncologist's office. The doctor was saying words like adenocarcinoma, pancreatic, and stage 4. I didn't hear the rest. The world went fuzzy. All our mature, responsible plans evaporated in an instant. The divorce, the separate houses, the new life, it all vanished. There was only one path forward. I moved back into our bedroom that night. I held her while she cried. The divorce was never mentioned again. It was a secret we would carry, a ghost that would live in our quiet house. The next 3 years were a blur of hospitals, chemo, and a courage from her that I still can't comprehend. And my role changed. I was no longer the estranged husband on his way out. I became the devoted caregiver. I learned to manage for drips, track medication schedules, and blend smoothies she could keep down. I held her hair back when she was sick and read to her when she was too weak to hold a book. To the outside world, to our friends, our family, and especially to Leo, we were the ultimate love story. A tragedy, yes, but a beautiful one. I was the stoic, loving husband who refused to leave his wife's side. They saw devotion. They saw strength. They didn't see the man who was grieving a marriage that had died long before the cancer ever appeared. Sarah, in her fear and pain, started to rewrite our history. It wasn't malicious, I don't think. It was a comfort. She'd tell Leo stories about our perfect first date or how she always knew I was the one. In front of her friends, she'd squeeze my hand and say, I couldn't do this without him. He's my rock. He's always been my rock. And what could I do? Correct her? Actually, honey, you remember we were sleeping in separate rooms and had a divorce lawyer on retainer? No. You smile. You nod. You play the part. You do it for her, to give her peace in the unimaginable horror she was facing. And you do it for your son, because his life was already falling apart, and he needed to believe in something. Leo, who was now a teenager, saw this performance and believed every second of it. He saw his dad, his hero, selflessly caring for his dying mom. He built a shrine to our marriage in his mind. It was perfect, untouchable, the stuff of movies. My lie became his reality, and the longer it went on, the more impossible it became to ever tell the truth. I was trapped. I was living in a museum exhibit of a life that wasn't real, and I was the only one who knew it. When Sarah passed, the grief was immense and complicated. I mourned the woman I had once loved, the mother of my child. I mourned the years we'd lost to quiet resentment. And I mourned the fact that we never got to have our clean, amicable divorce. We never got to be the happy co-parents we planned to be. Instead, her death cemented me in the role of the grieving widower of a perfect marriage. At the funeral, person after person came up to me, clasping my shoulder. You were an inspiration, Mark. The love you two had was one for the ages. I just stood there, a fraud in a black suit, accepting condolences for a relationship that had been a ghost for years. The first year was about survival, getting Leo through his grief, navigating the crushing silence of the house, trying to figure out who I was without a role to play. Leo clung to the myth of our marriage like a life raft. He'd constantly say things like, Mom would have loved this, or, I hope I can have a love like you and Mom did one day. Each sentence was a small twist of the knife in my gut. How could I ever tell him that the love he admired was an illusion we'd maintained for his benefit? By the second year, a little bit of light started to creep back in. I was still lonely, but it was a different kind of loneliness. It was the loneliness of a man who was only 47 and didn't want the rest of his life to be an epilogue. Then I met Anna. It was through a mutual friend, a casual dinner thing. She was a landscape architect, funny, smart, and with a warmth that felt like stepping into the sun. She was divorced, had 2 kids, and she understood complicated. For the first time in almost a decade, I felt like myself. Not a husband, not a caregiver, not a widower. Just Mark. We took it incredibly slow. Coffee dates, walks in the park. After 6 months, I knew it was serious. And I knew I had to tell Leo. It was one of the hardest conversations of my life. We were in the car, driving home from his soccer practice. I kept my eyes on the road. Leo, I started, my voice unsteady. It's been 2 years now. And, well, I've met someone. Her name is Anna, and I really like her. I was hoping maybe you could meet her sometime. The silence in the car was instantaneous and cold. Already? He said, his voice flat. It's been 2 years, buddy. Yeah, only 2 years, he shot back, looking out the window. It was a warning shot, but I was too hopeful to see it. I thought he just needed time. A few weeks later, I planned the barbecue. Low-key, casual. My backyard. I thought if he just saw how nice she was, how good it was for me to smile again, he'd understand. I was so wrong. He was sullen from the moment she arrived. He gave one-word answers and spent most of the time scrolling on his phone. I saw Anna trying. She asked him about soccer, about school. He was a brick wall. Then, I made a mistake. Anna told a joke, a dumb, silly pun, and I threw my head back and laughed. A real, deep, genuine laugh. I saw Leo's head snap up. He looked at me, and his face crumpled. It was a look of pure betrayal. It was as if he'd caught me desecrating a grave. He watched as Anna playfully swatted my arm, and I smiled at her. That's when he stood up. That's when the bomb went off. You're a cheater. After he screamed, after Anna had gathered her shocked kids and left with a whispered, call me later, the backyard felt like a war zone. I stood there, heart pounding, watching my son's chest heave with rage and hurt. How could you? He spat, tears now streaming down his face. In our house, in Mom's house, you never even loved her, did you? You were just waiting for her to die so you could replace her. And that was it. That was the moment the lie broke. I couldn't do it anymore. The weight of it, the sheer unfairness of his accusation, it was too much. That night, after hours of him slamming his door and me staring at the walls, I sat him down at the kitchen table. The same table where Sarah and I had decided to end our marriage. Leo, I said, my voice hoarse. I need to tell you the truth. The whole truth. And it's not going to be easy to hear. I told him everything. I told him about the quiet house, the roommate years, the mutual, sad decision to separate. I told him we were planning the divorce when she got sick. I explained that staying, that caring for her, was a choice I made because I did still care for her as the mother of my child and as a person I had spent 2 decades of my life with, but that the romantic love was already gone. The man you saw for those last 3 years. I was playing a part, Leo. I did it to protect her, to give her a peaceful end. And I did it to protect you, because you were already going through hell. It was a lie, yes, but I hope you can understand it was a lie told out of love. His face went through a storm of emotions. Disbelief, confusion, anger, and then a deep, profound hurt. The perfect love story he'd built his world around had just been demolished. He didn't yell. He just looked at me with hollow eyes and whispered, "So my whole life is a lie?" And he walked out, leaving me alone at the table. The weeks that followed were the worst of my life. He barely spoke to me. He stayed with his aunt for a weekend. The house was quieter and colder than it had ever been. I called Anna and explained everything. She was incredible. She said, "Your son just lost his mother and the story of his family all at once. Take all the time you need. I'll be here." I finally convinced Leo to see a grief counselor with me. In that neutral territory, things slowly started to shift. He was able to be angry, to be hurt, to ask questions. I was able to apologize for the deception, and he was able to slowly, painfully, start to understand the impossible position I had been in. He had to grieve his mom all over again, but this time, he was grieving the real person, not the saint from a fabricated love story. And he had to grieve the marriage he thought we had. It's been 6 months since the barbecue. It's not perfect. It's not a Hollywood ending, but it's real. Leo apologized. I apologized again. He agreed to have dinner with me and Anna. Just the 3 of us. It was awkward, but he asked her a question about her job. She made him laugh. It was a start. Last night, I found Leo in the living room, looking at an old photo album. It was from a family vacation when he was 10. Sarah and I were standing on either side of him, our arms around him, big goofy smiles on our faces. He looked up at me and said, "This was real though, right?" We were happy then. I sat down next to him and put my arm around his shoulders. "Yeah, buddy," I said, my throat tight. This was very real. And maybe that's the truth of it. Nothing is perfect, and nothing is a total lie. It's all just messy and complicated. We were happy, and then we weren't. We were divorcing, and then we were a family facing death. I was a husband, and then a caregiver, and now I'm just a dad trying to build a new life on a foundation of hard-won truth. So, that's the story. That's the secret I kept for 5 years that nearly destroyed my relationship with my son. I guess I have to ask, was I wrong to hide the truth for so long to protect him? Or did I just make things 1,000 times worse? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you're here for the messy, complicated stuff, you might want to stick around, because Lord knows my life has plenty more of it.